Jared Polin, FroKnowsPhoto.com, and I'm sitting here with the Nikon D7000. It's a really, really cool camera, and when I first picked it up, I was pretty surprised about how heavy it was and, you know, how responsive it is when you are shooting with it. But what this video is about is for all of you guys who just picked up a D7000 and you're looking to understand what each button means. I did this with the D3100 and I'm going to continue to do this with any camera that comes out, but it's pretty much a walkthrough of what each button does or what each button means. And in the next video, where you will be able to click on a box when I put it up in the corner, you will be able to, or it's going to go through the menu and how I think you should set it, or how I would set it if I was using this camera full time, and also explain the different settings, how you get to different things. But in this video, let's talk about the basics. On and off switch, the simple thing of an on and off switch. For some people, you know, you never know. It could be something that you need to be shown where it's at or what to do. Literally, on and off, right there, white button or the white dial or the white line, you flick the dial to the right once and it goes to on. If you push it further, then it lights up the indiglow on top of the light. It's not even indiglow, actually. It's just like white, green lights. But anyway, to flick it off, you flick it back to the left, and that turns the camera off. But before we get into more of this, this is where the battery goes on the bottom. There is only one way to put the battery in. There's a picture on the bottom, and then here's your battery. Slides in. The yellow guard comes in, clicks the battery in, shut the door, and you're safe. You're ready to go. Where do your memory cards go? Right here on the side. It takes 2 SD cards. That means you don't have to use 2. You could use 1 at a time, but 2 means you could shoot RAW to one, JPEG to the other. You could shoot RAW on one, and then when it overflows, it will go right to the other. You could do pictures on one and video on the other, or just do video on both. So there's many different options, which we're going to go through in the menu system, but this is right behind the door. To open the door, you literally just slide it towards you, and it flips open with the spring. To load a card and unload a card, you push it in, they pop in. There's only one way to put them in, and there's a picture right inside the door how to do this. You pop it down, it clicks in. You pop the other one down, it clicks in. You shut the door, and you're good to go. So now you have the battery in, you have a card or two in the camera. We know how to turn it on and off. We'll go over how to put a lens on and off. So when you get it, it won't have a lens attached. On the lens, in this case, it's a 35mm Nikon 1.8, there is a white dot. On the body, there is a big white dot. So what you do is you line up the lens, white dot to white dot, and you twist it towards you. This way. Yeah, towards you the way that I'm holding it. It can only go one way. The Canons go the other way. To take the lens off, there's a button right here. You press the button, you twist it the opposite way that you put it on, and the lens pops off. So that's how you put the lens on and off this camera. Locks in. You'll hear that click. That means it's on. So that's the basics of battery, cards, and putting the lens on the camera. Now, let's look at where should we go from here. We'll just look at these buttons up top. So you have a bullseye looking button. It's got a white dot surrounded by, you can see the picture up here. This is how you select your metering, whether it's spot meter, center weighted meter, or 3D matrix meter. It's how the scene is being read, how the light is being read in the scene, and the exposure is being formulated from that. Next to that, you have a plus minus. This is for your exposure compensation. It's not a feature that I really use all the time, but it's if you wanted to do exposure compensation, that's how you do it, plus and minus, by holding this down and turning either the back dial or the front dial, depending on what you are looking to change. Same thing, I'll move back to the square with the dot in the middle. For the metering, if you turn the back dial, it's going to change the meter. Actually, now that I turn the camera on, when you hold the plus and minus, it actually doesn't change anything unless you use the back commander dial. So that's this dial in the back. This dial, when you're in manual settings, will change your shutter speeds, and the front dial is going to change your aperture. It's going to change your aperture. But you can reverse those if you really wanted to, but normally the shutter speed's controlled in the back and the aperture is controlled in the front. No longer do we turn turn an aperture on the lens any longer, because it's all digital at this point. There is a function button up on the front of the camera that you can set to do something. You can have it be, a way to meter. You can have it do your depth of field preview, but it's a fully functioning button that you can set with different options that will take on different effects. It will do different things when you press that button. Also, you'll notice this green dot. So what the green dot means, this is how you reset the camera back to the factory default. You would hold down, you would find the other green dot, which is actually on the back next to the quality button. If you held both of these buttons in for a couple seconds, the camera would reset itself to the factory settings. Very rarely will you have to do that. Same thing over here. There is a, let's just say format. I can barely read it. It's small. Yeah, it says format. It's in red. And you would find the trash can on the back, which we'll explain in a minute. If you wanted to reformat your memory cards, you would press both of these buttons down at the same time, hold it in, it will blink once, you press them again, and then you're reformatting the card, which basically cleans it off and starts fresh with a new, no images on the card. So that takes us through the top of the camera, the front dials. Also, this light right here, we'll go into that. So you see this light on the front of the camera. That is your focus assist light. In low light situations, it's hard for the camera to focus. So in order to focus, it will send out a beam of light. I personally turn it off because I find that it distracts people, so I don't really use that. So as we turn the camera to the side here, we see the flash button. It looks like a lightning bolt. When you press the lightning bolt, the flash will pop up just like this. That means that you are turning the flash on and it now is active. The flash also, when you hold down the flash button, it also controls what's called rear curtain flash, rear sync, slow sync, red eye reduction, and then when you turn the front command dial while holding it in, it's going to lower the amount of flash light that is being sent out. So it's cutting back on the power. Now we'll get more into that in the next video where I go through the menus and how to set things to show you what each thing is actually doing when you change the buttons. We've come over to this button right below it. The flash is the bracketing button. This is if you wanted to do HDR and you were shooting JPEGs. It's you can set your bracket to +2, +3 to -3, or something like that. It goes to +3 and -2. I don't know why. I'm gonna have to look into that. But that's if you want to bracket. I personally don't really bracket anything. Never have. So right below the white dot, which is what we lined up to connect the lens, is the release button to take the lens off. I'm not even sure what they call that. I think it's the release button, but that's what you press in, which then allows you to take the lens and put it off. Right below the D7000, you may be wondering what those 3 dots are. Those 3 dots, that's where the microphone is in the camera that it's going to pick up for when you're doing, it's going to pick up the audio for when you are recording video. So as we go further down, you see a dial that will say AF and M. So you have autofocus and then manual. It's a switch that goes from M to AF with a button in it. This is new for Nikon. It used to say CSM, or on the pro cameras like the Nikon D3S sitting here, it says CSM on the side, so I can go from continuous to single focus to manual focus all in one area. But now they added this button that when you press it, you can change your different focus, what's it called? You can change your different focusing from autofocus, AFC, continuous, AFS, single, and AFA, which is basically autofocus. It's going to select the proper focus depending on the mode that you're set. I never leave it in AFA, which is the auto mode. I will either do it in single or in continuous. So that takes us around that area. There's you may be wondering on the bottom of the camera what this rubber piece is. When you remove this rubber piece, there are some connections under there. That's for attaching a vertical grip or a battery grip. The grip allows you to shoot vertically. It also allows you to put multiple batteries in the camera so your batteries will last longer. So now we move around to the back of the camera. You see the sideways looking triangle, that is your playback button. When you press that, that is how you're going to preview what images you took or video that you took. Next to that is a trash can. You can assume what the trash can means is it's not Oscar the Grouch. You know, Oscar the Grouch isn't going to come out and be like, feed me. What did Oscar the Grouch used to say? I don't know. He was just a grouch, right? I don't know what he used to say, and feed me would have been Little Shop of Horrors, so that's a totally different thing. But when you press the trash can, when you're looking at a photo or video, it will say delete. It has an exclamation point, and if you hit yes again, then it's going to delete that file from the card. To cancel that, you could hit basically any other button, like the shutter button halfway down, or, that's funny, I didn't get to the shutter button, I should talk about that. Or you could just hit the play button again, and that will basically take away the cancel. So let me run back to the shutter button real quick. You have your on and off there. The shutter button is what you press to take a picture. Also how you autofocus the camera. By pressing it, depressing it halfway down, it's going to autofocus the camera. When you press it fully, it's going to take a picture. So that's that. So back to the back of the camera, you have your AEL and your AEL lock. Those are different functions which we can explain in the next video, but they're ways of locking in your exposure or locking in exposure. Wow, I said that twice. Or locking in your focus. Next to that, you see a plus minus. That's a diopter. For those of you who wear glasses and need to, change the diopter to balance out with your particular glasses, you use the diopter to do that. This is your viewfinder with the rubber piece around it. Above the viewfinder with this, usually will have a piece of plastic in it right here, is your hot shoe for your flash. And that's where you would put an external flash, or also have a microphone attached if you were doing better, wanted to capture better audio for your video. So next to the AEL button, you have 6 holes, and I'm pretty sure that that's where your audio is played back. That's where the speaker is to play back your video or the audio from your video. Right below that, you have a dial that it's not a dial, it's like a sling-loaded trigger. When you trigger it to the right, it turns on your live view. It also has a red record button right in it, which means when you press that, it's going to record your video. To get out of live view mode or to get out of video mode, you just push the trigger back over again, and it takes you out of video mode. So below that, you have a multi-directional dial. That's how you're going to get through your menu. That's how you're going to select your different focusing points. And it has an OK button, which is what you click to OK changes in the menu, or also it can be set to put your focusing point back to the middle. Right below there, you have a switch that has an L and a dot. L means that it's locking it's locking this dial. This dial will not function when it's locked. At least it shouldn't function. Let's see, it doesn't function when you are in shooting mode. It will still function when you're going through the menu system. Below there, you have an info button. That info button allows you, it pulls up what's on the back of the screen so you can see all the different settings. And really, that's all your info button's going to do. It does allow you to make some changes in the camera too, but not as much as if you were using, say, a D3100 or a D3000. The info button allows you to make more changes in that camera because you do not have dedicated buttons on the outside. This 3-inch screen, which I just spit on, is your HD screen. This is how you preview your images. I just took another picture of my pants. That's how you preview your image or see the image, see a picture that you just took, as well as how you record your video. It's what you see when you're recording video. It comes with a protector, a piece of plastic protector, and I took it off right away. I do not use the plastic protector. I rather clean this screen. It's a glass screen, if I am not mistaken, because it's the same as what's on my D3S, and that's like what your iPhone is or your iPad. It cleans off very easy, and I rather clean that off than use this piece of plastic, which constantly it's already dirty, filthy dirty, and it just fogs up. I don't want to use that, and I never have used it. So now we have your menu button. The menu button obviously turns on the menu. Then below that you have a button with a key, which is a lock. It locks an image so that you can't delete it. I don't use that function personally. And then a question mark. So when you're in a menu and you don't know what something means, you can press the question mark and it's going to explain to you what that setting means, which is great. It's like having a built-in user's manual. It also has a white balance above it. So when your menu system is not on, if you press the WB, not the network, if you press the WB and you rotate this back dial back here, then you're going to change the white balance. ISO, same thing right below it. When you press down that button and you turn the dial, you're going to change your ISO. So there's dedicated buttons, unlike the lower end cameras like the D3100. They do not have dedicated buttons as plenty as this camera. The checkerboard and minus is for zooming in on a picture or zooming out, so you can either see one picture on a screen, or when you press the minus in the review mode, it could have, let's see, it could have 4 pictures on the screen, it could have then 1 to 9, and then it goes to a huge amount of pictures. It loads them all onto the screen in really small thumbnails. To get back, you press the button below it, which has the quality, but it also has a magnifying glass, which just means zoom in on your pictures. And that quality button is how you rotate from RAW to JPEG or different settings. Usually, the way I set it, being that I shoot RAW, is it stays in RAW forever. If there was a dedicated lock button to do that, that's what it would be. I would leave it on that full time. So that brings us to the top of the camera, and we're almost there. You have your manual setting. That's what the M stands for. That means you have to set your aperture, set your shutter speed. You have the A setting, which is aperture priority. That means you set the aperture and the camera is going to set the shutter speed to work to get you a proper exposure. Now, shutter priority is the S. Shutter priority means you set the shutter speed and it's going to set the aperture based on the exposure. Then we go to the P, which is program. Program is pretty much auto. It's going to make all of the choices for you in the camera, for your exposure, that is. Then you have the green mode, which is the auto mode. I would recommend getting out of auto mode as quickly as possible. You'll learn much quicker when you do that. Then you have a flash with a no flash sign through it. You know, so you have a no flash sign there. That means that the flash will not pop up, but you're still in full auto mode. Then there's scene modes in case you want to go in and select your running man, which is for sports, your landscapes, your portraits, and everything like that. Again, I recommend staying in the manual aperture priority, shutter priority modes. Try not to stay in those predetermined modes. It's good to start in there, but as you learn and get better, you see how you progress by getting out of those modes. You have these new modes called U1 and U2. These are user-defined modes. I'm going to get more into this in the next video, but you get to set the camera and save those settings into this mode. So you could have the most extreme settings on the high end saved into U1. You could have the lowest settings in U2, not the band. I wonder if they had to pay for the use of rights of U2. Do you think they had? I don't know. Anyway, so you could set different modes and then save them right into these U1 and U2. That's really cool. For example, if I was shooting hockey, I know that in U1 I would want a higher ISO and a lower aperture, but a fast enough shutter speed, shooting in continuous focus. But I know that when I want to shoot the bench, players on the bench, I want it to be in single focus, not continuous. I want it to drop my shutter speed. I want it to shoot at a lower ISO because the subjects aren't moving. So by going from U1 to U2, I would then be going from the autofocus modes that I was set in continuous to then single focus with the different settings that I can work with ready to go. That's really awesome. So that takes us around that dial. It's pretty self-explanatory that when you turn the dial and it clicks in, if it's lined up with the white line, that's what you're using. So now we move to this very new function dial here on the back. By pressing this button and turning the dial, you can see that it changes. It has an S, a CL, a CH. S means single shot. Whenever you press the button, it's going to take one picture only. Continuous low. Right now it's set to 3 frames a second. That means when you go to CL and you shoot pictures, it's going to shoot at 3 frames a second. You can change that in the camera. I'm assuming that it would go up to 5 frames a second, as all the way down to 2 frames a second. And then continuous high, I have it set to the highest, which is 6 frames a second. So that's when you want to motor drive through photos, but be careful not to overshoot, because you just don't want to overshoot and get too many wasted pictures. The Q is quiet mode. Basically, the camera is going to make less noise when you shoot a picture in case you're in a quiet situation. You have the timer mode that you can set to get in a picture yourself or have the picture go off after 2 seconds, 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 20 seconds. Next to that, you have, it's really small on here, but I think it's the remote mode. You would turn the camera to this, and Nikon sells an ML3 remote, which is a wireless remote, which then would trigger the camera, autofocus it, and then when you press it fully, it will shoot a picture. Then we go to the M up, mirror up. That means it's going to lock the mirror up, which is going to block your field of view, but then when you press the button, the shutter is going to move, and then the mirror is going to come down after. The reason you use mirror up is because it causes less bounce, any vibrations in the camera from the mirror bouncing up and down if you're doing long exposures that are more sensitive to movement. So that's what mirror up is. And that really takes us through and around this camera for what each button does. I know it's lengthy, but go through this. It's like, basically reading the manual. I went through this manual the first thing I did so I could learn what each piece did. But this video is a great place to start. So I hope you're sitting there with your camera, watching this video, running through each mode or running through each dial with me. So pay attention up here in the box. Well, I don't know why I'm telling you this now. So hopefully you were paying attention to those boxes. But click this box right here to be taken to the menu video, which is going to show you how to go through the menu and set that to where I think you should set it, as well as what each function does and how it changes and what it looks like on the screen so you can visually see what that change looks like. So that's it. That's the rundown of all of the buttons of your Nikon D7000. Jared Polin, FroKnowsPhoto.com. See ya!